Some scientists, climate scientists, are finding that working with nature could be more effective because sometimes you just have to leave it to the beaver.
When people talk about saving the environment, most imagine high-tech machines, billions of dollars in funding, or huge government projects. But in Canada, scientists and conservationists have tried something different, something that at first sounded too simple to be true. They decided to bring back beavers, one of nature's oldest builders, and relocate them into dying wetlands. For centuries, wetlands have been one of the most important parts of Canada's natural environment. They stretch across the country in the form of marshes, bogs, swamps, and fens. These areas once supported a wide range of life: frogs, salamanders, fish, dragonflies, ducks, geese, moose, and of course beavers. Wetlands act like natural water filters, cleaning lakes and rivers by trapping pollutants. They are also like giant sponges, soaking up floodwater during heavy rains and slowly releasing it during dry periods. On top of that, wetlands store massive amounts of carbon in their soil, helping keep the planet cool. But during the last few decades, most of these wetlands have been disappearing. In southern Canada alone, over 70% of wetlands are already gone. Why? Because humans wanted more space for cities, roads, farms, and industry. Swamps were drained, marshes were filled with dirt, and rivers were forced into canals. Bulldozers replaced ponds with parking lots. Where once waterbirds gathered, now there are shopping malls. This change has been devastating not just for plants and animals, but also for people. Without wetlands, floods have become worse in springtime. Droughts hit harder in the summer, and drinking water has become less clean. Scientists sounded the alarm decades ago, warning that Canada could lose much of its freshwater biodiversity within one generation. Some even found that drained wetlands were releasing so much stored carbon that instead of helping the climate, they were making it worse. The challenge was simple, but enormous. How do you bring back what has been lost? Governments knew that building artificial wetlands or advanced water control systems would cost billions of dollars and take decades. But then researchers looked at the beaver, an animal once nearly hunted to extinction, and realized they had overlooked something. Beavers are natural engineers. They don't just survive in wetlands, they create them. By cutting down trees, building dams, and flooding valleys, beavers create ponds and slow-moving streams that give life to dozens of other species. Scientists asked a radical question. If beavers can build and repair wetlands by themselves, why not let them do the work? This simple idea began one of the boldest conservation projects Canada has ever attempted: the relocation of hundreds of beavers into dying wetlands. At first, people thought the idea was odd, even laughable. But as the project began, results started to show. To understand why beavers are so important, it helps to look at their history. Long before Canada became a country, beavers shaped its landscape. Rivers, lakes, and forests were designed not only by natural forces like rain or glaciers, but also by generations of these animals. Wherever beavers built dams, they slowed rushing rivers, created ponds, and gave other animals a chance to thrive. But in the 1800s, during the fur trade, beavers were hunted on a massive scale. Their pelts were prized for hats and coats, and soon entire populations disappeared. Wetlands dried up, streams ran faster, and the balance of ecosystems was broken. By the 20th century, most Canadians no longer thought of beavers as partners of nature. They were seen as pests. Farmers hated them because their dams often flooded fields or blocked culverts. City managers destroyed their lodges when they caused water to overflow onto roads. For years, people worked against beavers, never realizing that by removing them, they were also removing the natural water systems that had protected the land for thousands of years. It wasn't until the late 20th century that scientists began noticing something unusual. In a few remote places where beavers had survived, the land was healthier. Streams were slower, plants were greener, and animals were more diverse. Beavers had accidentally created ecosystems far more resilient than human-built systems. Their dams captured sediment, filtered pollutants, and built up rich soils that supported plants. Birds, frogs, insects, and fish returned in large numbers. People had once called a nuisance. Scientists began to call ecosystem engineering. A new idea took shape. What if beavers could be used not as pests to control, but as partners to restore? Provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia began small trials. Studying how beavers affected water systems, the results were impressive. In many cases, one single beaver dam was more effective than thousands of dollars of concrete structures. And unlike machines, beavers never stopped working. They repaired dams, built new ones, and adapted to changing conditions. Soon, the government and environmental groups agreed to test a bigger experiment. They would capture beavers, often those labeled as nuisance animals, and relocate them into dying wetlands. But this was not easy. Beavers are strong, clever, and territorial. Catching them required trained specialists, humane traps, and careful timing. Once captured, moving them was another challenge. Some were taken by truck to new wetlands, while others were flown by helicopter into remote areas. But relocation was only part of the difficulty. Not every wetland could support beavers. Some were too dry, polluted, or lacking in vegetation. Ecologists had to carefully test each site, checking water flow, food supply, and soil. In some cases, they even built artificial starter dams to encourage beavers to stay and begin building. Despite these hurdles, results began to show promise. In places where beavers were relocated, cracked soil softened, streams spread out, and birds returned. Life was beginning to flow back into areas that had been silent for decades. Even skeptical farmers and landowners began to see the benefits. During droughts, beaver ponds held water when everything else was dry. During floods, their dams slowed down surges, protecting nearby fields and roads. The more people saw, the more attitudes began to change. What once seemed like a strange idea was now proving to be one of the most effective conservation tools ever tried in Canada. Today, Canada's Beaver Relocation Project has become one of the most hopeful environmental efforts in the world. British Columbia. Organizations like the Interior Wildlife Rehabilitation Society, IWRS Rescue, orphaned or injured beavers from roadsides, construction sites, or farms. Instead of being killed as nuisances, these animals are rehabilitated and released into prepared wetlands. Each release is carefully planned. Beavers are usually paired, since they are social creatures, and given familiar bedding or food sticks to ease stress. Some individuals even have names like Maggie, Rudy, and Judy. Their stories help people connect emotionally with the project. The results are remarkable. Wetlands that were once dry are now alive again with dragonflies, ducks, frogs, and even moose. Water levels are more stable, pollution is being filtered naturally, and carbon is being stored once again in the soil. Scientists believe that within just 5 years, entire regions could recover faster than anyone expected. What makes this project even more exciting is that it offers lessons for the rest of the world. For decades, conservation was seen as a matter of money and machines. But the beaver experiment proves that sometimes nature itself provides the best solutions. Instead of fighting against natural systems, humans can work with them. This approach is cheaper, more effective, and more sustainable than most alternatives. Of course, challenges remain. Not every relocation succeeds. Some beavers wander away, others die from stress, and some wetlands are too damaged to support them. But the overall trend is positive, and the evidence is clear. When beavers return, life follows. Beyond Canada, this idea could inspire other countries to use native animals to repair damaged ecosystems. Whether it's wolves controlling deer in Yellowstone, elephants opening paths in African savannas, or beavers building wetlands in North America, the lesson is the same: nature has its own engineers. All we need to do is give them space and a chance to work. For Canadians, this project is more than just about saving wetlands. It's also about rewriting the story of the beaver itself. Once hunted almost to extinction, once dismissed as pests, beavers are now recognized as key allies in the fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. They represent the resilience of nature and the possibility of healing what was broken. And while this project is still young, it is already showing results that even the most advanced machines could not achieve. Looking ahead, scientists believe that if these efforts continue, Canada's wetlands could be healthier than they've been in a century. Communities could face fewer floods, cleaner water, and more stable ecosystems. And all of this would come from the work of an animal once nearly forgotten. The story of Canada's Beaver Relocation Project is more than just a tale of conservation. It's a reminder that sometimes the solutions to our biggest crises are not new inventions, but old partners waiting for us to notice them again. And in just 5 years, the humble beaver may prove to the world that nature, when given a chance, really can change everything. When Canada first started moving beavers back into its wetlands, many people thought it was a strange idea. Some even laughed about it, saying, "Really? Beavers are going to fix our land?" But behind the humor was a serious plan. Wetlands across Canada were drying up. Wildlife was disappearing, and entire ecosystems were collapsing. Scientists, conservationists, and indigenous communities knew something bold had to be done. They looked at the beaver, an animal that had once shaped much of Canada's landscape before humans trapped them nearly to extinction. Beavers are natural engineers. Cut down trees, build dams, and create ponds. These ponds slow water, refill groundwater, and provide homes for countless species. So the idea was simple. If humans put beavers back where wetlands were dying, maybe the animals could do the heavy lifting of repair. At first, it worked beautifully. Wherever the beavers were released, they got right to work. They built dams, dug canals, and slowed down rushing streams. Water began to spread across the land, and the dry soil started to soften again. Birds returned. Frogs started singing. Small mammals appeared. People who lived nearby could see real changes within weeks. But nature always has surprises. And soon the project faced problems no one had fully expected. One of the biggest issues was flooding in places where no one wanted it. Beavers don't think about human property lines, bridges, or farmland. They just build wherever they feel water can be controlled. In some areas, their dams backed water into people's yards. Roads were damaged. Small rural bridges were washed out. Farmers who had been excited about wetland recovery suddenly found their crops underwater. They began calling local governments, demanding something be done. Officials were stuck in the middle. They wanted the environmental benefits, but they also had to listen to angry citizens. Another problem was that not every beaver stayed where it was put. Some wandered off to areas that were less than ideal, farmlands, culverts, or neighborhoods. These escapees created headaches, chewing down trees, blocking drainage systems, and flooding fields. Wildlife officers had to track and capture them again, which was both expensive and time-consuming. In fact, some animals had to be relocated more than once. The question wasn't just how to move beavers, but how to convince them to stay in the right place. Meanwhile, modern infrastructure clashed with ancient animal habits. In towns and cities, beaver dams sometimes blocked storm drains and flood control. Systems, culverts, pipes that allow water to pass under roads became clogged. This created backups that sometimes flooded entire neighborhoods. On the news, viewers saw footage of flooded basements and drowned roads. Many people began asking if the whole idea had been a mistake. A few municipalities even suggested removing the dams entirely, or putting down the beavers that were causing problems. Conservationists pushed back, arguing that killing the animals would undo years of work. Still, the debate grew louder, and it became clear that solutions had to be found fast. On top of these human conflicts, climate change added even more difficulty. In dry years, some streams didn't carry enough water to support beavers, forcing the animals to leave or starve. In other areas, wildfires ripped through the land, destroying new habitats before they even had a chance to stabilize. The project that had started as a hopeful, low-cost solution suddenly seemed fragile. But instead of giving up, Canada chose a different path. Scientists, indigenous leaders, local communities, and engineers came together to find creative solutions. What happened next would not only save the project, but also create a blueprint for ecosystem recovery around the world. The turning point came when conservationists realized that working with beavers didn't mean controlling them completely. It meant guiding them. One of the smartest tools invented was something called a beaver deceiver. At first glance, it's just a simple system of pipes, but it's incredibly clever. These pipes are installed through a beaver dam, allowing water to flow at a steady, controlled rate. This keeps the water level behind the dam from rising too high, which prevents roads, fields, and homes from flooding. At the same time, the beavers remain happy because their dam is still standing and their pond remains intact. Communities that had once been underwater could now coexist with beavers safely. This simple idea saved thousands of dollars in repairs and stopped constant conflicts between humans and animals. But engineering alone was not enough. Many communities still doubted the project. That's when outreach and education became powerful tools. Conservation groups launched campaigns showing people the benefits of beavers. They explained how beaver ponds store water during droughts, keeping the land alive when everything else dries out. They showed how wetlands created by beavers act as natural fire breaks, stopping wildfires from spreading. Videos and town meetings helped change minds. In schools, children learned about beavers as nature's engineers, and they brought that excitement home to their families. Slowly, the narrative shifted. Instead of being seen as pests, beavers began to be viewed as allies in the fight against climate change. Indigenous communities played a central role in this shift. For many First Nations, the beaver has always been respected as a key part of the ecosystem. Elders shared traditional knowledge about how these animals interact with the land, and their insights proved invaluable. Indigenous leaders helped select relocation sites, knowing which valleys and streams had the best chance of success. In the Nicola Valley, elders even guided the release of sibling beavers named Rudy and Judy, treating the event as both a cultural and environmental ceremony. These sites, managed with Indigenous leadership, consistently showed stronger results than others. Beavers settled in more easily, the wetlands grew faster, and local communities trusted the process more deeply. In places where natural water levels were too low to keep beavers comfortable, scientists introduced another innovation: beaver dam analogues, or BDAs. These are man-made starter dams built from wood, posts, and branches. They mimic what beavers naturally build, and they help store water before the real beavers even arrive. Once the animals are released, they often build on top of these starter dams, expanding them into full systems. In one case, a rehabilitated beaver named Maggie thrived at Howarth Creek thanks to these structures. The BC Wildlife Federation even built over 70 BDAs across 6 sites to prepare for future relocations. Technology also played a major role in overcoming challenges. Some beavers were fitted with GPS collars so scientists could track their movements. After relocation, this made it easier to see where animals wandered and why. Remote water sensors were also placed in streams to monitor how dam building changed the flow of water. This real-time data helped scientists adjust strategies and avoid mistakes. Every relocation became smarter than the last. The payoff was remarkable. Within weeks of arriving in new areas, beavers reshaped the land. They built dams that slowed streams and created ponds. Water seeped back into the ground, recharging soil that had been cracked and lifeless for decades. Plants returned quickly. Reeds, grasses, and sedges spread across the wetlands. Seeds that had been dormant for years suddenly sprouted. The new greenery attracted insects, which drew in frogs, birds, and mammals. The transformation was visible even from space. Satellite images captured patches of green blooming around beaver ponds, expanding outward as the ecosystem healed. For people living nearby, the changes were not just visual, they could hear life returning. Frogs croaked at night, birds sang in the morning, and fish splashed in deeper pools created by the dams. Camera traps even recorded larger animals like moose and lynx exploring the wetlands. Farmers who had once been skeptical started to notice that their wells were filling again, fed by underground water restored by the ponds. Roads and fields that used to flood unpredictably were now more stable because beaver dams slowed and balanced. The flow of rainwater, most importantly, hope was returning. After years of ecological decline, Canadians began to see proof that nature could bounce back if given the right tools and a little patience. The beavers, once trapped to near extinction, were now rebuilding entire landscapes. But this was only the beginning. Scientists believed that if the project continued at this pace, the real impact would be seen in 5 years. Looking ahead, researchers believe the next 5 years will be transformative. By 2030, Canada's Beaver Relocation Project could restore more than 100,000 hectares of damaged land. To put that in perspective, that's larger than the entire land area of some small countries. These wetlands will act like natural sponges, holding billions of liters of water. During droughts, they will slowly release that water, keeping streams alive. During storms, they will capture excess rain, reducing the risk of floods. And during fire season, the saturated ground around beaver ponds will act as natural fire breaks, protecting forests and communities. The climate benefits are equally significant. Wetlands are powerful carbon sinks, and when beavers revive them, they also revive peatland soil that stores massive amounts of carbon underground. Scientists estimate that within 5 years, millions of tons of carbon could be trapped again in these soils, helping to fight global warming. What makes this even more powerful is that it doesn't require expensive technology or complicated machines. The solution comes from nature itself, guided by small, hard-working animals. Wildlife will also flourish. Species that had been driven out by decades of destruction are already returning. Bird and amphibian populations are expected to double in some areas. Ducks, cranes, salamanders, and frogs will thrive again. Its populations will grow stronger and cooler, deeper waters created by dams. Predators like otters, foxes, and even wolves will follow, supported by the richer food chains. For indigenous communities, this revival means more than just ecology. It restores access to traditional foods, medicines, and cultural practices tied to wetlands. It reconnects people to lands that had been lost. Even cities and towns will feel the benefits. Flood damage costs could drop by millions as beaver ponds slow down rivers. Roads, bridges, and farmland will be better protected. Local governments are already seeing the financial advantages of working with nature instead of against it. Beavers, once seen as pests that caused costly damage, are now saving money simply by doing what they do naturally, and the impact is spreading. Beyond Canada, other countries are watching closely. Environmental leaders are studying the project as a model for ecosystem recovery. In Africa, there are talks of introducing similar strategies near Lake Chad, one of the most threatened wetland regions in the world. If it works there, it could inspire a global movement. Beavers or similar wetland engineers could help restore landscapes on multiple continents. By 2030, the hope is that wetland collapse will be declared officially reversed in many parts of North America. Decades of decline could be undone by an animal once nearly wiped out for its fur. Scientists say this may be the most surprising part of the story, that such a huge environmental turnaround could come from creatures so small and overlooked. And so, the story of Canada's beaver relocation is more than just about animals. It's about resilience, patience, and the power of working with nature instead of fighting it. It shows that even in an age of climate extremes, solutions can be found in unexpected places. The beaver, once considered a nuisance, is now a hero, a symbol of how ecosystems can heal when given the chance. The next time you hear the splash of a beaver's tail or see the outline of a dam stretching across a stream, remember this. Those little builders are not just shaping ponds. They are shaping the future. In 5 years, their quiet work may prove to be one of the most important environmental projects of our time. And it all started in Canada, with a bold idea that many doubted, but that might just change everything.